Hey everyone, this is Mike from Comic Book Trove, back today with another Omnibus review. And today I'm going to be taking a look at the Aquaman by Geoff Johns Omnibus from DC. Now, just to give a quick bit of context on this series, this Aquaman series was part of DC's New 52 relaunch that they did back in 2011. And like many other DC characters, it resulted in Aquaman starting with a new issue #1. Went right back to the beginning, kind of a fresh start. And yeah, the whole real point of the New 52, and Aquaman being no exception here, was that the purpose was to really kind of streamline a lot of the characters, a lot of the world really of DC, and make it more simple and accessible for new readers to kind of get on board with DC Comics. So Geoff Johns was kind of the creative lead here on Aquaman. He also took charge of Justice League during the New 52 era from the beginning. And you get some great artwork throughout this run as well by primarily Ivan Reyes, which I think that's how you pronounce his name. Apologies if I'm wrong. And also Paul Pelletier, which again I may be mispronouncing. And sorry if so. But anyway, their artwork is great. Certainly I'll say that before we even go in. And you can see some of Ivan Reyes' artwork on the cover right here. I think that's a really nice cover image, I have to say. Yeah, so we'll just take a look through the book here, and I'll kind of give some of my thoughts. I'll showcase it as I generally do in my videos. And at the end, kind of say, did this run succeed? Is it good? Is it a great point for new readers, as it was supposed to be? Do I recommend it? So yeah, we'll just take a look at the dust jacket first of all. You see the spine is quite simple, straightforward. Aquaman by Geoff Johns. Kind of a nice sort of turquoise colour background with white text. Fairly simple, but quite nice. The back of the dust jacket, yeah, an image of Aquaman there. And you know, the blurb on the back, which gives you a description of what's in here, what it's about, and the content as well, which, you know, feel free to pause and take a look at that. But you get in Aquaman issue 0 to 25 with one omission. Issue 20 is not in here. But you also get 23.1 and 23.2, which are a couple of villain issues, and Justice League issues 15 to 17, because there is a crossover event with Justice League in here. On the book itself, just to quickly have a look at that, you get this nice little image. The image is disrupted a bit by the spine being exactly the same as on the dust jacket, but it is otherwise this cool wraparound of Aquaman fighting against Black Manta, who is a very awesome character. So yeah, we'll jump in and take a look through this book here and show it off, see what it's all about. So firstly, you get a table of contents in here. Now, I usually make a point of mentioning this when I'm talking about DC books, just because not all DC books give you a table of contents, and sometimes even when they do, they don't give you page numbers, so the table of contents is kind of useless. But this is a book where you get both a contents page and there are page numbers, so it's actually useful. The covers throughout, though, they are these kind of virgin covers, so you don't get any of the text. There's no Aquaman anywhere, nothing that actually indicates what issue you're reading either. So this is issue 1, but you can see it doesn't tell you anywhere on the page that it is issue 1. So you'd only know that if you happen to just know what the cover is, or you referred back to the contents page. But yeah, and then on the reverse side of the cover, you get a kind of black and white version of it, which is pretty cool. But I would like if DC just popped a little bit of text in the top right corner or left corner, wherever, just to tell you what issue you're on. But it's a minor point, really. Some people won't be bothered by that, I'm sure. But yeah, so as we get into the book straight away, what hopefully is apparent, because I can't really praise it enough, is just how excellent the artwork is in here. Initially, as I say, by Ivan Reyes, who is just an outstanding artist. He'd worked previously with Geoff Johns on Green Lantern and drawn, I think, the Blackest Night event, which is actually excellent as well. You know, that's a fantastically brilliant artwork that features in that series, and again, it applies just as much here. I think he does a really great job of drawing this series. But the story as well, the writing by Geoff Johns, I think, is really good throughout most of this as well. What you're basically starting out with is an Aquaman who is very much kind of caught between two worlds. So he's living on the surface world, he's living in this lighthouse, Amnesty Bay, which was his father's lighthouse. And, you know, he has a kind of loyalty and connection to the surface world and to humans because of his father having been human. But also his mother was a queen of Atlantis and an Atlantean, so For those unaware, Aquaman is basically kind of half human, half Atlantean. He can live on the surface world and underwater. And he's kind of divided. His loyalty and his sense of belonging is kind of split between the surface and the sea, the undersea world. So he's very much kind of torn between those two. It leads to him having a bit of an identity crisis throughout here, where he's not quite sure what to do for the best, who he should be fighting for at times. He's living with Mira, his wife Mira, seen here, who is just a stunning redhead and an absolutely excellent character. I mean, I will say right now, this series could also almost be called Aquaman and Mira, because she co-stars in it and features just as prominently as Aquaman does, and I would say she's just as strong a character, if not slightly more interesting at times, to be honest. She is very well written and a very powerful character as well. She has the power of hydrokinesis. She can control the water with her mind, basically, which is pretty powerful. Yeah, and in this first story arc, you get these creatures introduced called the Trench. That's the collective term for them. They're these kind of sea monsters. They just kind of turn up out of nowhere, start attacking, and Aquaman and Mira have to fend them off. It's a very kind of fast-paced start to things, kicks things off in a very exciting way. And it just, and it immediately kind of launches you into a mystery as to what these things are, why did they attack. And that's kind of the first plot point, really. The first story arc really involves Aquaman and Mira trying to figure these things out. And they come from this really kind of deep sea, pitch black trench, a literal trench. So they are called the Trench. They're from a trench. Really great artwork in here. All these kinds of undersea landscapes and settings drawn beautifully by Reyes, and these creatures as well. I mean, this is a fantastic looking series, it really is. And I think that one thing that I will say as well that Geoff Johns does really well in terms of writing the series is, and this is something I think Johns does really well in general, he makes characters accessible. So I think that applies here. I'd say it applies to his Green Lantern run, Justice League run, Run of the Flash. He makes it so that you can come into these characters and he will introduce you to who they are and what they're about without you ever feeling like you're being kind of patronized, or it's not like you're having your hand held and walked through things. He has a way of writing that to me works very well for bringing you into the world quite quickly and smoothly without you having to get too confused about who people are or what things what's going on. So I will say that this is definitely an accessible series. It is something that's very new reader friendly. For me, this was the first Aquaman series I ever read, in terms of solo Aquaman stories. And not only did I find it easy to understand, but also incredibly enjoyable. We get a really cool scene here with Mira doing her thing, controlling the water. This is just a really fun and exciting read. I think Aquaman, this is probably, maybe the best of the New 52. Probably between this and Batman for me, this and Scott Snyder's Batman. But certainly, this is the best Aquaman stuff that I personally have read. Now, I haven't read a huge amount of Aquaman, to be fair, but nevertheless, I can definitely say that this is not only one of my favourite New 52 runs, but this Omnibus, in fact, it might make a top 10 list if I were to do a top 10 list, and that's something I may do on the channel soon, like a top 10 Omnibus, top 10 runs, or something like that. This could be in contention. I rate it that highly. So you also get the Aquaman's past is explored and developed throughout here with the introduction of these other characters called the Others. So that's the actual name of the group, the Others, which turns out is all these guys. This team of characters that Aquaman kind of was running around with and doing stuff with when he was younger. He reunites with them in the present for a story. You get Black Manta introduced pretty early on, and he is, without a doubt, I think, one of DC's best villain characters. Just a very cool character, just a really cool design, for me anyway, I think. and has a good personal motivation to hate Aquaman and to want revenge against him. So we see him featuring quite prominently during this run. And then you start to get the introduction of Atlantis, and the kind of Atlantis is presented in a really interesting way, I think. The way that the political machinations of people in Atlantis and their kind of resentment of the surface world. You've got people who are loyal to Aquaman, to Arthur, and want him restored on the throne, but similarly you've got people who are kind of more extremist and think that he's kind of only like a half-blood Atlantean because of his mixed parentage, so they think it's like an insult for him to be a king of Atlantis, and all this sort of stuff. These kinds of subplots are brewing throughout here, meaning that things are never simple for Arthur. Likewise, as I say, Mira's featuring prominently, and her backstory, her whole situation is more complicated than it initially seems. You know, when the story starts out, you've got Aquaman and Mira living together, married, seemingly happy and living a great life. But you know, things are not that simple. And I'm trying my best to sort of avoid specific plot spoilers here, just because I do think this is something that is really well worth reading if you haven't checked it out before. At the same time, I am obviously flicking through the book, so you might see some stuff that inadvertently spoils something, so apologies if so, but I don't want to dwell on any one scene for too long, because as I say, this would be something I think is best for people to enjoy for themselves. Because, you know, I definitely do recommend it. Now, there does come a point about halfway through, mentioned there's a crossover with the Justice League, and this is getting to it here. This is really the culmination of the first 2 or 3 main story arcs in here. It culminates in this crossover event where it's kind of like the conflict between Atlantis and the surface world comes to a head. There is a big epic battle. Justice League are involved. Mira's involved. And Aquaman is kind of unsure who to fight for. You know, he wants to defend the surface, but he also feels an obligation to stand with Atlantis to a certain extent. And it makes for exciting stuff, I would say. And yeah, given that Geoff Johns is writing both Aquaman and Justice League, I think this is a smoother and a better crossover event than you sometimes get when different creators have to kind of cross something over together. When it's the same guy writing the 2 stories, I think naturally it's just a bit easier for that to cross over, so it flows a bit more naturally. And by this point as well, we've got the artwork by Paul Pelletier, which is still really cool. It's a different style, slightly different style to Ivan Reis. I personally prefer Reis's artwork, but it's only marginal, and that is not to say anything really negative about this, because I also think this is a great style. Honestly, I can't say there's a single bad page of artwork in this entire book. Artistically, it is stunning. And it is definitely one of those instances where you're getting both excellent storytelling and writing and excellent artwork as well. And that's a combination that, when you find it in a comic, is just really, really satisfying to get something like that, where you just enjoy every aspect of it. And for me, this Aquaman run is the case. This omnibus in particular, I would just say that the binding is not fantastic. Like, it's not really bad, but you can see getting towards the end here, the book is starting to close itself a little bit on the last sort of 100 pages. So you do have to hold it open, you know, both towards the beginning and the end. Slight, you know, minor criticism really. It's not the end of the world, but just point it out. Also, what's really good about this this run as well is that it has a really kind of satisfying end point, and that's another thing that you can't take for granted in a an ongoing series like this. That there's ever going to be a kind of satisfying place to truly end the story, and obviously it didn't end the story, but the final issue by Geoff Johns does have a really cool end point, which is actually here. A place where if you were to stop reading Aquaman there and then and not read on any further, it still feels like you've read a complete story. And then you get quite a few different variant covers in a bonus section in the back by a whole variety of artists and a whole different array of styles. There's a robot chicken cover there, which I just thought was quite funny. You get some work here by Jim Lee covers. But yeah, quite a few different variants in here. Then you get some original character sketches, which are always cool to see. Yeah, about 700 pages long, this book. Not one of the biggest omnibus, not one of the longest runs, but it is one that is highly recommended by me. I think whether or not you read it in this omnibus or you pick up, I think there's about 4 trade paperback collections, trade volumes that collect the whole run. And you can probably read it digitally as well, I'm sure. So I think however you choose to read it, if you haven't already read it, I think this omnibus is still available though, so it's worth picking up if you are an omnibus collector, I would say. Because it's definitely a really well written run. It's a really kind of satisfying story. Whether you're a new reader, I think, or whether you're already quite familiar with Aquaman, I think there's stuff here that you would enjoy either way. As I say, when I read this, I was totally new to Aquaman, didn't really know much about the character at all. He was still, in my mind, that kind of the butt of the jokes that you see kind of all over the place in pop culture. And this was the book that completely undid that perception of Aquaman for me. Aquaman went from being like a joke, who was a useless character who talks to fish. I read this run and I'm like, wow, Aquaman's a badass, and Mira is an extreme badass. So yeah, just to reiterate again, highly recommended, brilliant storytelling, brilliant artwork, really cool omnibus. So yeah, hopefully that was insightful and interesting. As always, that's what I'm really going for with these videos. And I'll be back again covering another book soon. Thanks a lot, guys.